Before we get into today's episode, I want to thank a couple sponsors that we were able to secure for this season. It's exciting to be able to get sponsors for this. We're really thankful for them. The first one, you might have heard them already, is D&D Metal Recycling and Auto Salvage. The Scuttlebutt's been pairing with D&D for quite some time. D&D began as a small hauling and used auto parts operation in the Pittsburgh area in the late 1970s and has grown into a full-service metal recycling company with 2 locations, Lawrenceville and Tarentum. These are state-of-the-art scrap yards with deep roots in the community and a strong commitment to the service of their customers. D&D accepts all types of metal, both ferrous and non-ferrous, that may be generated by industrial manufacturing, construction and demolition, small commercial entities, as well as individual customers. They have a wide variety of material handling equipment and are capable of managing any job in a timely and efficient manner. You can contact them for quotes and availability at D&D, that's D and D, autosalvage.com. Thank you, D&D, for supporting this podcast. Been wonderful collaborating with you. We'd also like to thank a new sponsor for the Scuttlebutt, Tobacco-Free Adagio Health. Tobacco-Free Adagio Health is dedicated to preventing and reducing tobacco use and increasing education about tobacco hazards and secondhand smoke. Of course, the best way to be tobacco-free is to never start. And we'll be sharing more about the many programs offered by Tobacco-Free Adagio Health in the future. You can check out more of their work at tobaccofree.adagiohealth. It's ADAGIO health.org. Tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org. Really excited to have sponsors on board for the Scuttlebutt, and I hope you enjoy this upcoming episode.
Are there team leaders that are more aggressive than others? Yes, 100%. But there's no team leader out there that's gonna risk his team.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Scuttlebutt. I'm your host, Sean Hall, Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. We're a nonprofit in Western PA whose mission is to create communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. And if you've been a fan of The Scuttlebutt for quite some time, you may have come across our episode with my co-host Ryan All, who is an Army veteran, talking about The Hurt Locker. This is a Jeremy Renner movie from way back, and I think it's 2008. It was very suspenseful. I really liked it as a civilian. It's all about this EOD tech who's a bit like a cowboy. I enjoyed it. Ryan had very different thoughts on it. So go back through our YouTube. We'll put the link in the description here and watch his review of the movie. Well, Ryan went to one of his buddies who it actually is an EOD tech. David joins us for this episode to talk about not only the Hurt Locker, but to talk about his story, his training to become an EOD tech, why he decided to do that. And we get a bit into the Army combat fitness training that has recently gone through a big change that Ryan and I did talk about in a previous episode as well. So it's really fun to talk to David about this. I hope you enjoy the episode. And as always, please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell on YouTube so you're the first to know whenever we release new episodes. And without further ado, enjoy this episode about EOD techs, the Hurt Locker, which we get into, and I think you'll really enjoy it, and the Army Combat Fitness Test. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan All. I'm an Army veteran, and I am excited to be here back helping co-host the Scuttlebutt with my friend, Captain David Winne, who's going to introduce himself next. David and I went to lieutenant school together, and he's an EOD officer, and I invited him back here, and we're gonna be talking about the Hurt Locker later, so I'm excited. So I'll pass it over to Dave to introduce himself.
Yeah, the LT school feels like a long time ago, but somehow not. Yeah, so Captain Dave Winne. I'm a captain in the United States military, active duty. I'm a currently company commander for an EOD company at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I've been in the Army for about 8 years now, and all I've done is EOD. That's what I know. And that's provided me a lot of opportunities over the last 8 years, from deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. Been to airborne school, air assault school, ranger school. So I feel like I've kind of done a lot in my just 8 years, and we'll see where the future goes. But yeah, having a blast as a company commander at Bragg here, and I'm excited for the chapter.
Sweet. Now, David, just for some of our civilian audience that might be listening in, can you define what EOD is?
Yeah, so the definition of EOD is an acronym for Explosive Ordnance Disposal, or like when I try to explain it to civilians, I just say, just think of it as bomb squad, right? It's the military's version of bomb squad. And that's usually the easiest way for people to understand it. Kind of, you know, what EOD became known for, especially in the military, was the IED fight, or the improvised explosive device fight. You know, EOD has been around for, well, now 80 years. So, in fact, the United States Army just had the 80th anniversary of EOD. And it originated from basically World War II and the British responding to these bombs that were all over the place in Great Britain. And no one really knew how to respond to this and how to mitigate the hazard. And that kind of developed, you know, EOD. And now it's something totally different than that. But we still have those origins and that skill set. But EOD became popular during the Iraq and Afghanistan war because of the emerging threat of IEDs. And something that, you know, IEDs, again, have been around for a long time. You know, even in the Vietnam War, they were having IED booby traps. Most of those were like more manufactured booby traps. And what we were seeing in Iraq and Afghanistan was these explosive devices made from stuff around the house. You know, it wasn't military grade. It wasn't manufactured. Some of these devices could be built just with stuff that you had in the kitchen, essentially. And EOD found itself at the tip of the spear when it came to responding to these IEDs. So,
do they still have EOD guys? Is it like bomb squad now, or is it EOD guys who, like, when they find a bomb from World War II that's like in a lake somewhere, you know, do they pull those up and EOD guys are the ones that are defusing them?
100%, 100%. So that's like, and that's a big part of what we do. And what's cool about EOD is EOD, unlike many other missions. So, you know, there's infantry, there's armor, and, you know, Ryan was is, I guess, infantry, right? But their mission is solely built around a deployed environment, right? If you're not deployed, well, what are you doing? You're just training, you're training for deployment. EOD is cool and unique in its sense that you have that deployment mission, but you also have a stateside mission. So my company, for example, the 18th EOD, we are responsible for any explosive hazards found in North Carolina or South Carolina. So we respond all over North Carolina and all over South Carolina. It could be as simple as a dud grenade, that a soldier threw a grenade and they forgot to pull the pin, and now it's just laying down there. Well, who's going to respond to that? Who wants to walk up on a grenade that was just thrown, right? EOD, that's what we do. Or it could be, hey, my grandfather passed away and now we're going through his old stuff to get rid of it, and we found this, you know, kind of bomb looking thing. What is this? Well, who do we call it? You call EOD. So it's really cool, and I keep saying that, cool and unique, but it is, you know what I mean, to do all these mission sets, and you don't even have to be deployed to do that. We get to do our job while we're stateside, while we're in the United States.
That's really interesting. I did not realize that EOD had such a large stateside mission on a day-to-day basis. I didn't realize that. I thought you would call like a police, you know, bomb squad, or you know, like there was a civilian counterpart to that. That's interesting. This is kind of something that I'm curious about, right? So you're company commander now. So what's the task org of an EOD company look like? Because it's got to be like slightly, you know, much different than, you know, an infantry or armor platoon, where it's like, you know, so what do the guys do, and how many are there in like an EOD company?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll throw it right back at you. So how many people are usually in an infantry company?
Anywhere between 120 and 150, something like that. 100 guys.
Yeah, so 120, 150. EOD, it's 30.
In a company.
So yeah, EOD,
wow,
it's about 30. Yeah. So as a company commander, it's a lot less to manage. You know, when all I have to worry about is 30 guys, and that includes 3 support personnel. You know, an admin, supply, and a signal specialist. But beyond that, we have so I have a first sergeant, and then I have an ops officer, and then I have 3 platoons, 3 line platoons. And each platoon has a platoon leadership of a platoon leader and a platoon sergeant, and then each platoon has 3 teams. Mm-hmm. And currently, EOD operates in 2-man teams. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, hold on. I saw Hurt Locker, and they were a 3-man team. And you're right. EOD used to operate in a team of 3. It then transitioned to a team of 2. And just now, we are actually transitioning back to a team of 3. So you'll have the team leader, you'll have the team sergeant, and then you'll have like a team specialist. So those kind of 3 make the EOD team.
That's cool.
So yeah.
That's a lot different.
That is a big. Yeah. It's a little different than most units. Yeah.
That's cool.
I'll be interested to talk a bit about the roles of each of those teams in a second, but first I want to kick back and say, okay, 2014 was whenever you enlisted?
So 2014 I commissioned right after so I graduated from Liberty University in the summer of 2014, and I guess it was just a couple months later we started the basic officer leadership course at Fort Lee, and that was 2014. And that's what I think it was 4 months. It was about 4 months, and then we started. And then it kind of split from there. So EOD selected officers, and then normal logistics officers were in the same class. But then at the end of that, we split. And whereas logistic officers went off to do great things throughout ForceCom or wherever, we then went to EOD Phase 1 school at Fort Lee. So that's a whole nother conversation, is the structure of EOD school and that pipeline, what that pipeline looks like. And we can talk about that too if you want. I don't know.
Well, first, why did you decide to join EOD? Because like you said, nobody really wants to walk up on a live grenade. Why would anybody choose that?
It's a good question. Why choose this job? I think especially as EOD is unique in the way that officers are afforded the opportunity, I think, to be more involved on the ground operations. You know what I mean? Whereas a platoon leader or a lieutenant in a lot of other jobs might not have the opportunity to be with their guys and work in small teams and actually do the job that their team leaders are doing. And EOD is that you can do that. So my platoon leaders, everyone goes through the same schooling. You know, my EOD team leader, he went to the same school that I went to, and I went to the same school that my platoon leader. So everyone has that same basic skill set once they come out at EOD school, and that's a very different than I think a lot of other jobs. For me too, it was like, when I was going through college, my friend hit me up and was like, "Hey, I know you're about to make your decision. You should go EOD." And I was like, well, he's kind of like me. We kind of have a similar mindset. And so then I was all in. I just went for it. But I think it's like the excitement and the danger and kind of like the coolness factor of it that kind of brings people in. EOD is not real, what we would say, like big army. We're able to operate in teams and have unique opportunities with that.
But that's very true. And I think what David brings up is a great point, right? Like I've had instances where I was part of big army and instances where I was like part of smaller, like away from the flagpole type units. And I much prefer that, right? Like when you're not in those formations where you're just like, everyone's breaking it down, the lowest common denominator, it's so much better, right? Like it has to be, especially for you guys. I mean, like how much leeway, like how much oversight, who's your boss, Dave? Like who do you report to?
Yeah, well, so now I report to a battalion commander, you know. So the in the battalion, so the 192nd battalion has 8 EOD companies under it. But you're exactly right. It's very like decentralized command. it's, mostly, hey, operate on your own, and we're here.
That's a lot of trust.
So, yeah. You have to, right? I mean, there has to be trust. I was talking to my soldiers about this the other day, is that there has to be mutual trust. It's trust that from me down to my team leaders, but they have to trust me that I'm going to have their back as well, and I'm going to ask them to do this highly dangerous job. Well, it can't be done without me trusting them to execute properly. So, yeah.
Where is your battalion headquarters at?
It's at Bragg.
It is?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
At Bragg. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Now, not all the companies are here, though.
Right.
We have like companies in New York. We have a company in Virginia. So they're kind of all over the place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's also different about EOD, is that you'll have we call them standalone companies, where there's no higher headquarters. And that's more common than not, really. You'll have a EOD company on a military installation, and that's it. That's the only EOD people there. There's no higher headquarters. They're just, there to do their job. So a lot of, like, for instance, Fort Sill, Fort Benning, where else? Fort Yakima. Like, these are all standalone companies with no higher headquarters. Yeah.
Cool.
What was the training like?
Yeah. So the training, and that's what a lot of people hit me up about that, on social media, or they'll ask me, hey, what's the schoolhouse like? How do I prepare for it? What can I do to get ready for it? And the truth is, you really can't do much to prepare for it. It's one of the most, it is without doubt the most academically challenging things I've ever done. And it's broken into 2 phases. So you have phase 1 at Fort Lee, Virginia, and that's about 3 to 4 months. And if you pass that, you go to phase 2 in Eglin Air Force Base, Florida. A rough life. All right. You're on the beach in Destin, Florida. And that's the only thing that keeps you going. You know what I mean? Like, it's some of the hardest challenging school, but hey, you're in Florida, so you can kind of have fun on the weekends. But it's highly academically challenging, not really so much physically, I'll be honest, although there are physical requirements. But the way they teach it, I kind of thought of it when I was in phase 1. I was like, they basically took an entire semester of a course and smashed it into a week. That's what it feels like. So it's just, you're just drinking through a fire hose, as we would say, which is tons of information coming at you. And they expect you to receive it, understand it, regurgitate it, but not only regurgitate on paper, but be able to practically apply it. So usually teach you something, then you'll have a written test, and then you'll have a practical test. And that's essentially how EOD school is built. And there's different phases, right? We'll say different parts to the phases. So, there'll be a part about demolitions that's only, just about explosives and how to build explosive charges. There's a part about it's called ground division, where it's everything, all ordnance related to ground. So landmines and rockets and projectiles. And then there's this part about any air munitions. So missiles, guided missiles, bombs, etc. So there's these different parts to the school, different divisions. And, you have to pass one to get to the next one, and pass that one to get to the next one. It's just a very lengthy process and a very stressful process, because you could be in the school an entire year and then mess up, and they say, hey, thanks, good luck on your next job. So yeah, it's crazy.
Does that break down to, so we were talking about company, platoon, team. Is each team specialized in a particular type of bomb?
Yeah, that's a good question. No. So every EOD tech can do the same as the other EOD tech. Okay. So there are units, there are certain EOD units in the military and in the Army that are specialized to do certain things. But as a whole, most EOD companies, team A can do what team B can do. And I have to have it like that. You know what I mean? My guys have to be able to do everything, because you just don't know what you're going to encounter. You know, if I just send them out, they get to it and they're like, well, actually, I can't do this, but team B can do it. I'm like, well, that's no use to me, right? Everyone has to be able to do mostly the same job. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on the ACFT, because we're friends on social media, and I've seen some of your thoughts, and this really interests me because Sean and I did a review of the ACFT after the first time I took it last year, and I think you and I probably have similar thoughts on this. But first, in background, right? Like, Dave works out a lot. Fitness is a big part of his life. So
I don't believe you.
Every time I see his posts on social media, I'm like, oh man, I need to go work out like right now. Like, I was in the National Guard and the Reserves when they were rolling out this ACFT, and I was like, this is never going to happen here. But they put their money where their mouth is. They got the equipment to everyone. It's out there. And it was a long build-up process. It's still going on. So what are your thoughts on not only like the ACFT as it is now, but like as it was building? What do you think about the test? What do you think about how it's been going? How do you think of it? Do you think it's accurately measuring things? Just what are your thoughts on the ACFT?
Oh man, yeah, this could be its own episode. I think the ACFT, or just PT in the military in general. Because you're absolutely right. PT is something that I hold like near and dear to my heart. I definitely prioritize it, not only for myself but for my soldiers. The ACFT, though, I love it. I love the ACFT. The PT test, how many times we take the PT test, push-ups, sit-ups, 2-mile run. And for some reason, I always felt like the PT test, and Ryan, maybe you can attest to it, it felt like more stressful than the ACFT, because like the PT test was like, you have no room to mess up. You know what I mean? You have to hit every single one. Yeah. And it was also very boring to train for. It was like, well, because to get good at push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run, guess what? You have to do push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run. That's there's no. But the ACFT I like because I also I do a lot of CrossFit and functional fitness training, and it matches well with that. So when I started taking them, I was scoring extremely high numbers, and people were like, how are you scoring this high number? It's like, well, this is what I've been training for. This is kind of my everyday activities. And some people were like, well, it's too hard. It's too challenging. Okay. I've maxed it 3 times in a row. 600. The 600 is the max score. And I've maxed 3 times in a row. The lowest I ever scored was a 589. It's not that hard.
Were you depressed that entire day after that?
Yeah. I mean, if you push yourself, it'll tax you. Yeah. But the idea I was taking it just about a couple weeks ago again, and I was thinking in my head, this is actually a really well-designed test, because what they did, and clearly there's a lot of thought put into developing. They researched this a lot, but it starts out with a strength movement. And as you go through the 6 events, it slowly is raising your heart rate and prepping you for that 2-mile run. It's really actually a well-designed test. And like doing it hitting that the sprint drag carry, and that's where your heart rate will spike, and then backing off a little bit to do these what was the leg tuck, and then coming back on the run. So I mean, I love the ACFT. I think it's wonderful. Like, we should have been doing this years ago, and a lot of other branches are doing it. The Marines has a combat fitness test, and I know the Navy and the Army, or the Navy and the Air Force, they do certain different kinds of tests for certain roles. But I think it's good that the Army has a codified one to better prepare soldiers for combat. Now, the leg tuck thing, and I don't know if you guys talk about the leg tuck, but I don't know if you've tried to plank for 3.5 minutes. Not that easy.
No, I told people, I'm like, people are going to be unpleasantly surprised when they sit down. They're like, oh, I'm going to do the plank instead. They're going to get down there. They're going to, about 40 seconds in, they're going to start hating their life if they haven't planked before.
Yeah.
I'm lucky I could probably hit 20 seconds at this point. Yeah, 3.5 minutes is rough. You're shaking.
We're talking about one leg tuck. And that's what I said to Sean when we were talking about this. I'm like, you can't give me one leg tuck.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Oh man. It is crazy. It is crazy. And I think it was kind of frustrating because I was like, it felt like maybe I was just seeing different things than other people were seeing. Because what I was seeing was like, hey, if soldiers train for this, if soldiers put in the time, they can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't understand why it was like, well, you know what? You just can't do it. Some soldiers just can't do it. I guarantee you, if you gave me, you could give me any soldier, and within a month, I will have them doing leg tucks. Like, it's going to be painful growth process, but with it, I guarantee it. And to me, it felt like a leadership failure at, the middle management level, where NCOs weren't really taking ownership of it, and platoon leaders weren't really taking ownership of it. And hey, I know we tried the ACFT 6 months ago. Okay, well, have you done leg tucks with them every single day and checked in on them every week and retested them? I don't think that was being done. So to me, it was like a leadership failure for a lot of this. Now, the other part of me says, hey, what's harder, right? Leg tucks or planks? And this is the mindset I've tried to have. Plank, a 3.5 minute plank is harder. To that, I take, the Jocko kind of mindset. Good, right? All right, that's harder. Good. You know what? I was maxing the old one. I needed some more challenge. So I'm going to do 3.5 minute plank. So it's harder. Let's do it. You know what I mean? That's the kind of attitude I'm trying to have. We'll see how it works out, though. I don't know.
As somebody who has focused and has obviously, a really great physical, regiment, have you tried like the Marines? We've seen a lot of videos on YouTube of like Army guys trying the Marines, test, and Marine guys trying the Army test. Have you done that?
No, I haven't. I would be interested to do that. I know that the Air Force is like very similar. I think just their normal test, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Marines, what I like about them is you have to do pull-ups, and I really believe a pull-up should be involved in the combat fitness test, because what's more like involved in combat than a pull-up? Pulling yourself up into another ledge or pulling yourself into a room, or like that is the most transferable skill. I'm not really sure how a plank applies to combat personally, but it is what it is.
I'm trying to think of a way, but Ryan.
No, yeah. I can't think of anything either. I don't know.
Works your core, which helps out your back problems. Me at my age,
I don't know.
So they always tell me.
Yeah.
So when Dave and I were in lieutenant school together, he was the one in charge of the PT for our class. Him and this other guy named Nick, who was a college football player, and both of them obviously into fitness, and we had a name for them. We would all show up, 0 dark 30 in the parking lot of Army Logistics University, and we're like, oh, there's Hans and Franz getting ready to work us out. Yeah. Which is a dated reference, but I think it's still applied. But that was
gonna pump you up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. I'm Franz. I remember that.
So back to EOD, the Hurt Locker. Did you see that before you enlisted at all? I can't remember what year that came out.
So Hurt Locker came out in 2008.
Okay.
And so I guess I had seen it, but to be honest, it wasn't like it made an impact on me. I think when I saw it, I saw it and I was like, wow, that was a really cool movie. But it wasn't like I walked away from like, man, I need to join EOD. Like that's all I wanted to do.
And that was well before. But that was well before you had decided to join the Army, or were you still were you like set still at that point?
Yeah, I knew I was going to join the Army, to be honest. That's what I wanted to do in my life. Even at very, very young age. That's all I ever wanted to do was join the Army. And in fact, I was very close to enlisting. I went to the recruiter, and man, some of these recruiters probably hate me because I wasted so much of their time because they almost had me. They're like that close. Mm-hmm. And I would go to the recruiter, and I went to the Air Force recruiter, I went to the Marine recruiter, went to the Army recruiter, and I had the paperwork ready to go. I think with the Air Force, went home, talked to my mom, and I was like, all you gotta do, because I was 17 at the time, and if you sign this, I'm good to go. And they were like, no, that's not happening. We're not doing that. And I didn't even know what ROTC was, or even the difference between enlisted and officer. Like, I didn't come from a military family. Mm-hmm. So in fact, no one really ever served. So it wasn't like I knew, what a certain military job was. I didn't even know what MOS meant. I didn't know the difference between enlisted and officer.
So what
thankfully,
made you
my career counselor.
I was gonna say, what made you say, like, I always wanted to go Army, if there was no real background with it?
There was, I shouldn't say I always wanted to go to the Army. I did always want to do military. Mm-hmm. I always wanted to do military. And then the Army thing actually came about because the Air Force and Army, those were kind of like the two that I was going back and forth. And I put ROTC scholarships in. And the Air Force came back and they said, okay, we'll give you a 3-year scholarship to whatever school you want. And the Army came back and they said, okay, we'll give you a 4-year scholarship to whatever you want. And I was like, well, okay, I'll take the 4 years. And mm-hmm. That's how I joined the Army. If the Air Force had come back and said they'll give me 4 years, I'd probably be an Air Force officer, or I'd probably be out of the military because I wouldn't like the Air Force.
Well, for fans of the Scuttlebutt, they all know Ryan's history with the Hurt Locker, and his love of Jeremy Renner knows no bounds. And
yeah,
his love of the factual elements of that movie know no bounds as well.
I would love to hear an EOD captain's take on the Hurt Locker, and I'm excited to hear it.
So the Hurt Locker, right? It comes out in 2008. I would have been in high school at the time. And I remember my brother sent me the preview of it. And I was like, oh man, this looks pretty cool. Like, again, I didn't know what EOD was. I didn't know what Bomb Squad was. But I remember I did like the movie, but I didn't really think anything of it. It wasn't like I like we talked about, it wasn't like I walked away knowing I wanted to be EOD. It wasn't until I think after EOD school where I went back and watched it. And that's when it was interesting. But even during EOD school, it was a running joke. You know what I mean? It was like at the beginning of the class, okay, why do you want to be here? Why do you want to be an EOD tech? And you'd always have that one guy stand up. He's like, because I saw the Hurt Locker. And then, of course, the instructors just like rail on him, be like, screw you. You don't know what you're talking about. Because the Hurt Locker, it's funny, in the EOD community, everyone knows it, everyone's seen it, and everyone has an opinion. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, I would say it's more of a laughing it off, or like, oh yeah, what a silly movie. I think I'm probably in the minority that I love the Hurt Locker. Mm-hmm. I really like the Hurt Locker. But you can't, just like any military movie, whether it be even the great ones like Black Hawk Down or Saving Private Ryan, they still are a somewhat fictional representation of a true thing. Mm-hmm. I guess Black Hawk Down is more realistic or non-fictional, but a lot of these movies are fictional representation of real events. Mm-hmm. And Hurt Locker, I think, nails it. You know what I mean? They get your attention.
So what do you got? The car has been parked illegally. The suspension is sagging. There's definitely something heavy in the trunk.
Interesting.
It's well made. It's well executed. It's well acted. Now, is it really accurate? Well, maybe not. But a lot of it is probably more accurate than you think. Mm-hmm. And specifically, so like, let's talk about the things that it does get right. like the opening scene, right? The opening scene is actually pretty accurate. You have the old team leader who ends up dying that Jeremy Renner replaces. They get called on this incident. They get the robot out. They do remote procedures, we call it. So first you try the robot, see if he can accomplish it without ever having to get in the suit. That doesn't work. Then he goes, okay, well, now I got to get in the suit. So he gets in the suit. He goes down, fixes the robot or whatever, lays the charge. All of that is pretty accurate, really. And then, hey, we're going to BIP this. He even uses the word BIP, which is blow in place. It's a common acronym in Eod. Hey, we're going to blow in place. We're going to BIP it right here. We'll get enough, a nice cloud right here. And then he goes up and the explosive goes off, I guess. I'm trying to remember. And he turns his back and he gets hit. And I always actually like to point out that actually, if he hadn't turned his back to that charge, he might have survived that hit, because the way the bomb suit's designed is it's a plate that runs down, that covers all your core your core, and it's not for the fragmentation, it's for the blast wave. It's to deflect the blast wave off of you. So when he turns, that's probably could have been what killed him in that movie. Whereas if he had just backed away from it quickly, he might have survived that. Anyways, that gets into like blast over pressure science and ridiculous. But anyways, the opening scene is actually pretty accurate. And some of the follow-on scenes of, they're operating in this 3-man team. There's already established security. They get called out to these IEDs or this VBID. It's really not that far-fetched. Now, some of it is far-fetched. So the idea that, hey, this 3-man team is going to go on their own in like the middle of the desert and do operations, or this team is like after responding to that big fire, they just run through the city and the one guy gets caught. Like, no, man, that's not happening. Right. And a lot of what makes EOD techs kind of frustrated is this cowboy, charismatic team leader.
What's he doing?
I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die comfortable. You're a wild man, you know that?
That's kind of just out there with no cares in the world. Are there team leaders that are more aggressive than others? Yes, 100%. But there's no team leader out there that's gonna risk his team. The attitude in that movie is that Jeremy Renner, or what's his name, and what's his actual Sergeant First Class William James, I wrote it down, that the idea that he just kind of does whatever because he gets a kick out of it. And if it risks his team, so be it.
I think us working together means I talk to you and you talk to me.
Are you going on a date, Sanborn?
That is inaccurate. And one thing that I think a lot of EOD techs take offense to is that, we're just cowboys out there doing whatever we want. It's like, no, there's actually very clear steps of what to do and what not to do. And no team leader would do anything to put his team at risk or unnecessarily. And I think if a lot of EOD techs, that's kind of their point of contention. They get that a lot of it is Hollywoodism, but that kind of attitude, it's just not, it's not prevalent and it's not really accepted. But then on the other hand, and because I was reading into this more leading up to this, and the writer, Mark Bull, he makes a good point. I even have it. And this is true. You have to remember, this is what he says. You have to remember at the end of 2004 and the beginning of 2005, Baghdad was the Wild West. And that's true. And you could do 10 or 12 bombs a day. And there's no right way to disarm a bomb because you don't know what the bomb actually is. You're dealing with a lot of uncertainty. So it's very much up to the individual bomb tech to decide on the best approach. Different techs have different styles. Some are more aggressive and some are more conservative. Some use robots all the time. Some are more hands-on. When you're talking about a movie, it's more interesting to watch the guy who has been doing improvising ways than the guy who just sits back in the truck and uses the computer. And that is very true. in 2004, man, it was insane in Iraq. IEDs everywhere, and there was no. It was just the EOD was just developing real standard operating procedures on how to deal with this. So guys were figuring it out as they go. Are there still basic safeties you have to apply to your execution? Yeah, 100% there is. But a lot of these things were first seeing IEDs, and they didn't know what they were doing. So they were figuring it out. And he's exactly right. Mark is right that just as we have different personalities, those personalities transfer into you as a tech. Each EOD tech has a different personality and a different way of how he deals with things. And some are more aggressive than others while still being safe the entire time.
That's cool. That's a really good point. And you're absolutely right. I remember, so I was deployed to Iraq in 04, 05, and I remember the worst part about finding an IED wasn't the danger you're putting yourself in. The worst part was that you knew that they were going to say, well, you're going to have to guard until EOD arrives. And they were so overworked that it was going to be like, I think the longest I ever waited for EOD was like 16 hours, something like that. Like, cause there were IEDs everywhere. There wasn't enough people to go around to go disarming these bombs. So there was like one team like doing them all. And it was crazy. Yeah. So absolutely right there, man.
Does that make you remember your first bomb that you ever defused, David? And could you tell us about it?
Yeah. So I would say I remember the first one, and it's kind of interesting because most officers, I'll be honest, I'm very fortunate in that I've actually been able to have, combat experience, but in Afghanistan and Iraq. And when I was in Afghanistan, we were on a patrol kind of clearing through a city, and we had, I won't get into too many details, but we located there's basically I think it was like a 105 in the ground. And in the middle of the road, I would say, while we're patrolling through. And then also simultaneously, about 100 meters away, they found a small command wire strand, which that is not good. If command wire, there means there's a spotter, there's a bomber, there's someone that's watching you, right? And it means that something could go off like that. And so that kind of gets the hair going on the back of your neck. And this was an interesting mission too, because the team that went in this time had been there before, and there had been a big Taliban flag, and they had taken down the Taliban flag. And sure enough, we go back to the same spot, and there's a bigger Taliban flag. Well, if you're the Taliban and hey, they came by last time, took our flag. Well, what do you think they could put right by the flag?
Right.
A booby trap, right? Because they're going to come back to it. And so sure enough, this is pretty much what it was leading up to this Taliban flag. And long story short is, thankfully, that the command wire, it wasn't connected to anything. It was a small copper wire. It was connected to the item, but it wasn't connected on the bomber's end, essentially. We were able to, like, at the end of the day, we were able to blow up the charge as an ordnance charge. And then we ended up, instead of taking the flag down, I just strapped a quarter block of C4 and I punted that entire flagpole. so there's no way you're going to put up.
Pull it out by the root.
Yeah,
that's great. So when this is another interesting question. Like, when you're out there on these missions to do this, like, how much explosives do you have on you? Right? You just said you just strapped a quarter block of C4 to. Like, how many pounds of explosives are you guys carrying with you?
Usually, so if it's like dismounted, it all depends on the mission. But if it's dismounted, I carried a wall charge with me, so that's about 4 or 5 blocks. And then I would carry multiple like drop charges, like smaller quarter-pound drop charges that I could just pop it and go. And then I carry another 2-3 pounds or 2-3 blocks of C that just for disposal charges. and then you carry deck cord on top of that, and then all your initiators. So it would get pretty heavy because you're carrying your explosives, and then you're also carrying a metal detector, and then sometimes you'd be carrying ECM, electronic countermeasures, with you. So it can get very heavy very, very quick.
Good thing you were doing all those planks.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, that's how they. Yeah. Yeah.
I was gonna say, Ryan, any other thoughts before we wrap up here?
No, I think that is some really interesting stuff.
I was gonna offer you a rebuttal for Hurt Locker.
I think he's absolutely right. The fictionalized stuff is the stuff that like drives us all crazy, right? When you see a dude in a military uniform who's like, they can't even get like the way the uniform looks right, or but yeah, I mean, I think when I go back and think about the Hurt Locker, the things that annoy me the most are the fictionalized pieces of it, right? So yeah, but I really appreciate getting his point of view on it as an expert in the field and as a guy who does this on a day-to-day basis. I think it's great. I want to thank you, David, for coming out with us. I was really looking forward to this one. It was great to catch up with you. And hopefully we can do it again soon. We do these things like on a regular basis, live events that are virtual as well. So if you ever want to come like see that or tell your story, like you're more than welcome to do that as well. I also wanted to give you one more chance. You are you're like a brand ambassador, right? For some sunglasses. Is that right? I want to real quickly tell me how you got into that and what it is, because that is interesting to me.
It's funny that's so interesting. It's actually a lot of people bring that up when they like meet me or like they see me like, oh, you're like Gators ambassador. No, it's just because I started wearing these certain sunglasses years ago, and I wore them to Afghanistan, wore them through all kinds of training, and I would post pictures, and then Gators, this company, would like repost them, and eventually I was like, well, if you're just going to keep reposting my pictures, like, hey, why don't we team up here? Right. And they were
free.
open to it. And yeah. It's great because they'll send me some sunglasses, or they'll reshare my posts, or I'll kind of give them feedback in the field of how their sunglasses work. But if you ever need a pair of sunglasses, Gators, they are the best company out there. 100% American made. Lifetime warranty, so they're great company.
You have some there at your desk right now?
Yeah, so
we gotta see them.
A couple pairs.
Yeah.
I got
we're gonna spotlight.
Yeah, so this Gators. I got like pairs everywhere, but yeah, I was just gonna say they're great for EOD because they're blast resistant, they're frag resistant, and and they look cool. And that's a big part of EOD too. So just, making sure you look cool.
So which is your favorite pair?
Probably like these. These are the Spectres, they're called. And yeah, no big deal. I know.
Solid.
The Deltas. But yeah, it's been fun. I don't know, and I don't know. It's been a good time. Yeah.
And my last question really goes to Ryan, but Ryan, when you were offered EOD, why didn't you take it?
Oh, I was not offered EOD.
No.
It wasn't anything that I didn't even realize like how that worked until I got into logistics course, and then I met all these other guys like, oh yeah, these 10 people they're going, or they're attempting to go down the EOD path, and I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like I didn't like I knew what EOD was, but I didn't realize that I was going to the school where they took like phase 1. I had no idea. And so the reason that I ended up picking logistics was because I had transferred to the National Guard, and they said you could go be an infantry officer, but you're going to be stovepiped to captain because there's just too many of them. And I was like, everything was over strength. I said, what's under strength? And they said logistics. I said, that sounds fun. I'll go do that. So here we are.
Yeah. Oh, there's one more thing though, because I need to confront Ryan about I saw the video about him saying how silly it is about the scene of Jeremy Renner being a sniper.
Yeah. So that was, I forgot. I wanted to ask you this. Do
Yes.
you guys train with Barretts?
Yes.
Very
So
cool.
little known facts, right? And that's one of the scenes where most people, I think, would see it and be like, this is ridiculous. How does Jeremy Renner know how to shoot a M107 50 cal sniper rifle? Because we are actually assigned those weapon systems. So
for what?
So that's the thing. So we don't call it, like, we don't qualify on a 107 like we do a M4 or M17. We use it as a tool. To us, it's called a tool. And we use it for what's called standoff munition disruption, or SMUD, Sierra Mike Uniform Delta, SMUD. And what that is basically like, the idea is, say you had a piece of ordnance, usually it's a submunition. So these things come out of the sky, usually a parachute will open up, and they're very small, maybe, about that size. And they're extremely, extremely sensitive. Like even just, touching it might make it explode. So the idea with SMUD techniques is that from a distance, you could destroy this thing just by shooting it with enough power and velocity. Hence why we have 107 50 cal, which is why Jeremy Renner knew how to use M107 Barrett. And even though he didn't use it to shoot ordnance, he probably knew how to shoot it at least somewhat accurately.
I will totally agree with you on this. However, the point still stands that in that movie, that bad guy sniper was waxing people left and right, and then they pick up the gun and the enemy sniper just can't find them all of a sudden. Like all of a sudden they can't be seen. I was like, he just shot a dude out of a turret from like 800 meters away.
I have no answer.
Your wife is like, shut up, I'm watching this.
So that's good to know, because when we posted that video, there was a comment on it that said like, no, Eod is trained on the Barrett 50 cal, and I was like, I wasn't aware of that, but it makes sense to do for that purpose. That makes a lot of sense.
Were they trained to grease it up with blood though?
Yeah, we did not learn that TTP. That's one we were not taught at school.
It's too bad.
Yeah. Well, David, I would thank you so much for coming on to the Scuttlebutt. You're welcome to come back anytime. To our audience, please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell on YouTube so you're the first to know whenever we release new episodes every Monday. If you have any comments or questions, thoughts about this episode, or have any suggestions for future episodes, you can email me, Sean, SHAUN, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. Ryan, it's always a pleasure to have you co-hosting. Welcome back for our season 6. And David, again, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.